The scream rides the dorm hallway like a blade, then cuts to silence as a phone vibrates on linoleum. Tessa said, "She was here an hour ago." A thin red smear glistens on cinder block, a message half wiped, half bleeding. Brandon said, "It's a prank, right?" The fluorescent lights pulse, offbeat, as if the building has a failing heartbeat. The phone flashes Emily's smiling contact photo, unanswered, relentless. A door at the end is wedged open by a shoe, the lace is soaked and limp. A cold draft snakes through, smelling of rain and metal. A distant elevator dings, cheerful and wrong. Tessa said, "Don't go in," but the shoe is already turning toward the dark. Somewhere, a camera clicks, or maybe it's the light dying. The phone stops, then rings again, louder, like it knows the name no one wants to say. Campus security strings tape as curious faces bloom like mirrors in the glass. Detective Mara Quinn steps from an unmarked sedan, rain speckling her coat. Mara said, "No one enters that room until I see it." Officer Jonah Park nods, already cataloging eyes, doors, angles. Tessa said, "She texted me at 11, and crushes the message into her palm." Brandon said, "I heard a thud, then nothing, avoiding the blood smear wall. The hallway smells of ozone and fear." Mara kneels by the shoe, reading scuffs like a ledger. Jonah said, "Camera at the stairwell is dead." Mara said, "Then someone wanted it blind." Phone rings again, and every head turns, as if summoned. Chief Roland Pierce arrives with coffee, steam and impatience. Pierce said, "Media will sniff this by dawn." Mara said, "Then let's give them nothing." A tech snaps photos of the smear. The sound like slow hail. Jonah said, "No forced entry, no struggle outside." Tessa said, "Emily wouldn't ghost me." Brandon said, "I barely know her," but his eyes track the open door. Pierce said, "Lock the floor, pull logs." Mara scans the hall, mapping fear to faces. Somewhere a printer spits forms like confetti. Mara said, "We start with the last person who saw her breathe." Inside the room, the bed is made like a stage, sheets tight. Nothing human. Mara said, staged. The desk holds a laptop with a scrubbed keyboard. Keys too clean in a lived mess. Jonah said, "Dust ring where a hard drive sat." Tessa said, "Emily kept journals, but drawers yawning show none." Pierce said, "She could have walked out." Mara lifts the shoe by its heel and frowns at grit. Mara said, "Basement sand, not this floor." A faint citrus tang hangs in the air, not dorm smell. Jonah said, "Cleaner." Mara whispers to the room, "Someone rehearsed this." A voicemail blinks on the phone recovered from the hall. Tessa said, "Play it," and clamps her hands to stop the shake. Emily's voice is a thin string humming from a well. Emily said, "If I'm late, don't wait, the basement is wrong." Then static eats the rest. Brandon said, "Basement," and steps back as if the floor tilts. Pierce said, "Lock it down there." Mara hears something else beneath the hiss, a second breath. Mara said she wasn't alone. Jonah said timestamp is 11:23. Tessa said, "That's when the stair camera died." The hallway seems to exhale colder than before. Detective Mara Quinn stares at the corkboard in her office, tacking Emily's photo beside a list of unanswered calls. Mara said, "She's not just missing, she's erased." Jonah said, "Campus cameras fail at the same hour." A rain-slick skyline presses through blinds, casting stripes across files. Mara rubs her temple, fighting an old migraine ghost. Pierce calls her cell, gruff and urgent. Pierce said, "The dean's furious, keep it quiet." Mara whispers, "Emily's not a headline, she's a person." Jonah watches her, knowing this isn't just duty. Mara's hand shakes over the photo, thumb tracing Emily's grin. Jonah said, "This is personal for you, isn't it?" Mara doesn't answer, but the silence says yes. Emily Carter's bedroom glows with fairy lights strung across lavender walls. Tessa said, This is her space, untouched. A journal sits under a candle, pages blank, cover stained. Brandon flips through photos taped on the mirror. Emily laughing with friends, with Tessa, with strangers. Brandon said, she seemed happy. Tessa whispers, she hid storms behind smiles. Mara kneels by the dresser, running gloved fingers over perfume bottles. Mara said, whoever was here before us chose what stayed. Jonah notes the missing laptop charger. Dust rings empty. Jonah said, no struggle, just subtraction. Tessa breathes in Emily's perfume and shudders. Morning floods the Carter family's living room, soft light broken by heavy curtains. Emily's mother, Margaret Carter, grips a teacup with trembling hands. Margaret, said she always called at night. Mara sits across, leaning forward. Mara said, we'll find her. Margaret's husband, Daniel Carter, paces by the mantel. Daniel said, police said that when my brother vanished too. Jonah takes quiet notes, eyes lowered. Tessa sits beside Margaret, holding her wrist. Tessa said, she promised me breakfast tomorrow. Margaret whispers, she hates oatmeal, tears streaking her cheeks. Mara feels her chest ache with mirrored grief. At the Student Union Cafe, hushed voices hover over clinking mugs. Brandon said, everyone's whispering her name. Tessa stares at the untouched coffee before her. Tessa said, Emily, never liked this place, too noisy. Mara leans against the booth. Mara said, tell me again about that night. Brandon shifts, eyes darting. Brandon said, we walked from class, I left at the stairs. Jonah interjects, and you didn't see anyone else. Brandon shakes his head, lips tight. Mara studies him, the silence stretching. Tessa whispers, she trusted you, Brandon. His jaw clenches. The cafe hum grows louder, pressing down like guilt. That evening, Mara sits in her car outside the dorm, windshield streaked with drizzle. A recorder plays Emily's last voicemail again. Emily said, the basement is wrong, her voice breaking into static. Mara whispers, what did you see down there? Jonah knocks on her window, holding a folder. Jonah said, phone records, calls made after she disappeared. Mara frowns. Mara said, impossible. Jonah nods, placing the file in her lap. Numbers unknown, calls placed at 2:00 a.m., long after silence fell. Mara's reflection in the glass looks like a stranger. She mutters, she was still reaching out, or someone was using her voice. The basement door groans as Mara forces it open, stale air rising like a grave. Jonah said, power's been cut down here. Flashlights sweep the cinder block, revealing graffiti shadows. Tessa whispers, she hated this place, her voice trembling. Brandon lingers near the stairs, jaw tight. Brandon said, why would she come here alone? Mara scans the floor, noting drag marks etched in dust. Mara said, because someone wanted her here. Pipes drip above them, echoing like a metronome of dread. Jonah said, camera here's smashed too. Mara exhales. Everything about this is deliberate. A metallic clang rings from deeper inside. The group circles a rusted locker wedged against the wall. Mara said, help me move this. Brandon shoves reluctantly, revealing a small gap behind. Inside, a torn denim jacket, Emily's scent lingering. Tessa said, that's hers, clutching the fabric. Jonah clicks photos, expression grim. Jonah said, she didn't leave on her own. Brandon mutters, someone planted this. Mara studies his face, the lie visible in his twitch. Pierce's voice crackles over the radio. Pierce said no word outside this team. Mara whispers secrets always bleed through cracks. The air feels heavy, as though the walls themselves guard truths. At campus courtyard the next day, rumors spread like wildfire. Students huddle in clusters, whispering Emily's name. Jonah said, crowd control won't last. Mara watches faces, searching for guilt. Tessa overhears two girls murmur, she ran off with someone. Tessa snaps, she wouldn't vanish. Brandon, pale, mutters, people vanish every day. Mara said, truth hides best in noise. A reporter edges closer, microphone ready. Pierce steps in, blocking. Pierce said no statements until cleared. Mara leans to Jonah. Mara said, notice who watches, not who talks. Jonah nods, scanning a tall figure leaving fast. Suspicion takes root. That night, Jonah reviews dorm's CCTV footage frame by frame. Static, glitches, faces passing blurred. Jonah said, someone scrubbed this. Mara leans in, noting the missing minutes. Mara said, what's between 11:20 and midnight matters. Tessa peers over shoulders, whispering, that's Emily's backpack. Brandon stiffens, insisting, could be anyone's. The footage skips again, freezing on a hooded figure carrying something heavy. Jonah rewinds, frustrated. Jonah said, the timestamps are doctored. Mara whispers, they knew we'd look. The glow of screens etches exhaustion into their faces, paranoia seeping into the room. Outside, rain thrashes the glass. In the dim library archive, Mara flips brittle pages of campus records. Mara said every story repeats somewhere. Jonah finds a file stamped sealed. Jonah said, basement closed for incident 10 years ago. Tessa whispers, Emily mentioned the basement was wrong. Brandon fidgets, eyes darting. Brandon said, why dig into the past when she's missing now? Mara slams the file shut. Mara said, because the past drags the present. Dust swirls like ghosts in their flashlight beams. Jonah mutters, records don't vanish without help. Mara whispers, then someone here wanted us blind long before Emily disappeared. The morgue chill seeps into bone as Mara lifts the sheet. A body, wrong clothes, wrong face, but Emily's necklace gleams against pale skin. Tessa gasps, that's hers, clutching Jonah's arm. Brandon stumbles back, whispering, it can't be. Mara's voice shakes, the necklace says Emily, but the body says someone else. Jonah mutters, a decoy. The coroner, Dr. Evelyn Ross, sighs, time of death doesn't match her disappearance. Pierce storms in, angry. Pierce said, leak this, and it's chaos. Mara whispers, someone staged a corpse to bury the truth. The room feels like a trap, secrets swelling louder than grief. In Mara's office, corkboard threads now knot into a snarl. Mara pins Emily's necklace photo beside the doctored CCTV. Still. Mara said, she was swapped. Jonah said, then the question is, who needed her gone? Tessa points to Brandon's name circled twice. Tessa said, he lied about seeing her last. Brandon erupts, I didn't touch her. His fists clench but eyes tremble. Mara whispers, truth leaks in rage. Pierce leans on the doorframe. Pierce said, you're burning suspects, not finding her. Mara snaps, she's alive until I see her dead. Silence hangs heavy, broken only by the hum of lights. A knock interrupts tension. A figure slips inside, hood lowered, face pale. It's Oliver Grant Gaunt, trembling. Oliver said, I saw her that night. Mara rises slowly. Mara said, who are you to Emily? Oliver stammers, I worked maintenance. She trusted me. Jonah narrows eyes. Jonah said, then, why hide? Oliver's hands shake as he holds out a flash drive. Oliver whispers, they told me not to talk, but I can't carry it anymore. Tessa steps closer, voice sharp. Tessa said, who's they? Oliver swallows, terrified, eyes darting to Pierce. Mara notices the betrayal hanging unspoken. The flash drive hums to life on Mara's laptop tight. Grainy video shows Emily in basement corridor, alive, whispering, please don't, before a tall shadow seizes her. Tessa sobs, that's her, that's real. Jonah leans forward. And I wouldn't. Jonah said timestamp, 11:23. Mara whispers, exactly when the camera went dark. Brandon mutters, "That's not me," but his voice cracks. Oliver trembles. "I copied it before they wiped the servers." Mara turns to Pierce, fury flaring. Mara said, "You knew." Pierce slams fist on desk. Pierce said, "Drop this, Quinn, or you'll regret it." The rune shifts, alliances fracturing with each breath. Later that night, Mara stands alone by the riverbank, city lights fractured on black water. She replays Emily's whisper in her mind, "The basement is wrong." Jonah approaches, quiet. Jonah said, "If Pierce is tied in, this goes higher." Mara said, "We're not chasing a missing girl anymore. We're chasing a conspiracy." Tessa calls on speaker, voice brittle. Tessa said Emily trusted someone, and that trust killed her freedom. Brandon's silence looms on the line, heavy. Mara stares at the water. Mara whispers, "The enemy isn't outside. It's inside the badge." The river swallows her words, leaving only silence. The night hums with sirens as Mara barrels through empty streets, her tires hissing on wet asphalt. Jonah shouts from the passenger seat, "Pierce is moving her tonight." Tessa's voice shakes over speakerphone. Tessa said, "I'll meet you at the south gate." Brandon's number flashes ignored. Mara grips the wheel whispering, "Emily's alive. This ends now." The cruiser's red-blue reflection streaks across glass towers like fractured truth. Jonah loads his sidearm, jaw tight. Jonah said, "We get one shot." Mara breathes in steel resolve. Mara said, "Then we don't miss." The city rushes past like a blur of betrayal and urgency. At the abandoned warehouse district, floodlights paint jagged shadows. Tessa waits near a chain-link gate, hood soaked from drizzle. Tessa said, "They took her inside," pointing with trembling hand. Mara steps out, scanning rooftops. Mara said, "Too quiet." Jonah crouches low, flashlight sweeping broken crates. Jonah said, "Tracks fresh ones." Brandon arrives late, sweat streaking his face. Brandon said, "I had to be sure no one followed." Mara eyes him, suspicion sharpening. Mara said, "Or you made sure they did." The gate creaks in the wind, every sound louder than reason. The hunt has crossed into enemy ground. Inside the warehouse, echoes swallow voices. Emily's faint cry drifts, "Help me." Then silence. Tessa gasps, sprinting toward stacked crates. Mara yells, "Stay behind me." Shadows flicker as Pierce emerges from scaffolding above. Pierce said, "You should have stayed quiet." Jonah raises his weapon. Jonah said, "Where is she?" Pierce sneers, "Buried in secrets you'll never dig out." Brandon shifts uneasily, muttering, "This isn't what I signed for." Mara growls, "You sold her out." A figure struggles in chains across the floor. Tessa cries, "Emily!" The room erupts in chaos as lights snap off, leaving only the sound of fear. Gunfire shatters the silence, sparks bursting from steel. Jonah dives for cover, shouting, "Down!" Mara crawls toward Emily, heart pounding. Pierce bellows, "Truth dies tonight." Tessa shields Emily's body with her own frame. Emily whispers, "Don't leave me." Brandon freezes mid-aisle, torn between fight and flight. Mara snarls, "Make a choice, Brandon." He drops his jacket, trembling. Brandon said, "I never wanted this." Jonah fires back, pinning Pierce down. Chains rattle as Mara breaks Emily free. Mara whispers, "I've got you." Emily sobs, clinging to her. Shadows lurch as Pierce descends, teeth bared like a predator ready to end it all. The clash peaks as Mara and Pierce lock eyes across the flickering warehouse floor. Pierce roars, charging, gun in hand. Mara sidesteps, slamming him against steel beams. Mara growls, "You used the system to bury her." Pierce gasps, "Truth is poison," spitting blood. Jonah restrains him, cuffs snapping shut. Jonah said, "Not anymore." Emily sobs in Tessa's arms, voice breaking, "I thought no one would come." Mara kneels, brushing Emily's hair back, whispering, "You're safe now." Brandon slumps to the floor, guilt painted across his face. The storm outside rattles windows, but inside, the storm has finally broken. Rain eases into mist as squad cars crowd the warehouse lot. Pierce sits cuffed in the back of a cruiser, face pale in the flash of red-blue lights. Mara said, "The Empire crumbles with its keeper." Jonah leans against the hood, exhaling relief. Jonah said, "But shadows like him don't act alone." Tessa wraps a blanket around Emily's shoulders. Tessa whispers, "I thought I lost you forever." Emily's voice shakes. "I kept waiting for the door to open." Brandon watches from a distance, guilt carved deep in his features. Mara said, "Tonight, we won, but the war lingers." The air feels raw with aftermath. Back at the precinct, Mara drops evidence files on her desk, papers spilling like open wounds. Jonah said, "We've got enough to bury him." Mara stares at Emily's necklace on the table, whispering, "And yet I feel no victory." Tessa sits beside Emily in the waiting area, brushing damp hair from her face. Emily said, "He promised me silence, but he gave me chains." Brandon slouches in interrogation holding, fists clenched, jaw trembling. Mara peers through the glass. Mara said, "He's not just guilty of silence, he carried their lies." Jonah rests a hand on her shoulder. Jonah said, "And now truth has a voice." Morning light bleeds through courthouse windows as reporters swarm outside. Pierce is led in shackled, sneering at flashing cameras. Mara mutters, "They'll make him infamous, not accountable." Jonah said, "Infamy burns too." Emily clings to Tessa's arm, whispering, "I can't face them." Tessa said, "You only face me." Brandon is escorted in cuffs past them, head bowed, whispers trailing, "Coward." Pierce spits, "She'll never be safe." Mara steps close, voice steel. Mara said, "You won't breathe her fear again." Cameras snap like gunfire, cementing the story in public memory. Yet beneath the noise, truth feels fragile, as though justice bends easily. That evening, Mara returns to her apartment, silence pressing heavy. She sets her badge on the table, staring at its reflection. Mara whispers, "Every truth costs something." Jonah calls, voice low. Jonah said, "You did what no one else dared." Mara replies, "And yet I don't feel whole." Across town, Emily lies in bed, trembling as Tessa strokes her hair. Emily said, "Will I ever stop hearing his voice?" Tessa whispers, "I'll drown it with mine." Brandon sits alone in his cell, eyes hollow, lips moving in prayer. The city exhales, unaware of scars left open beneath its skin. At dawn, Mara walks along the riverbank where Emily once whispered, "The basement is wrong." Fog coils above the water, soft yet heavy. Jonah joins her, quiet footsteps in gravel. Jonah said, "Pierce will rot, and truth breathes freer now." Mara said, "But rot spreads if roots remain." Emily's voice echoes faint in her memory, trembling but alive. Tessa's laughter over phone cuts through the fog, fragile but real. Mara smiles faintly, "Survival isn't the end, it's the start of rebuilding." Jonah said, "Then we rebuild with them." The sun edges above horizon, light spilling gold over the broken night. The trial chamber hums with tension as Mara watches from the gallery. Pierce sits shackled, glaring at the jury with venom. The prosecutor's voice echoes. He silenced witnesses, buried truth, and caged the innocent. Jonah leans toward Mara, whispering, "The law is catching up to him." Emily grips Tessa's hand, whispering, "He can't reach me anymore." Tessa answers, "Not while we breathe." Brandon testifies under oath, his words trembling but clear. "I hid the truth. I was weak, and it cost her freedom." Mara exhales, whispering, "And now truth stands on its own legs." The gavel strikes, shaking silence. The verdict lands heavy. The judge's voice resounds, guilty on all counts. Reporters outside roar like thunder. Mara watches Pierce's face drain of arrogance as shackles tighten. Emily exhales a trembling breath, leaning against Tessa. Emily whispers, "It's over." Tessa said no. It's beginning again without him. Brandon bows his head, shame clinging like chains heavier than Pierce's. Jonah mutters, "Monsters fall hardest when they built the tallest pedestals." Mara whispers, "And the scars remain longest in silence." The gavel strikes again, finality echoing louder than applause. A chapter closes, but shadows linger at the edges of victory. Night falls as Emily returns to her dorm for the first time since her disappearance. The hallway smells of bleach, the smear now scrubbed clean, but memory stains remain. Emily whispers, "It feels haunted." Tessa steadies her, saying, "Haunted doesn't mean you can't reclaim it." Mara follows behind, hand brushing the wall as if mapping its scars. Jonah lingers at the stairwell camera, newly replaced, muttering, "Too late, but not useless now." Emily steps inside her room, clutching a small journal. Emily said, "This time my words stay mine." The door closes, gentle yet final, reclaiming stolen ground. In the precinct archive, Mara files the case under closed, but her hand lingers on the folder. Mara whispers, "Closure doesn't erase echoes." Jonah leans in the doorway, saying, "It's the echoes that keep us listening." She smirks faintly, and sometimes they scream louder than truth. The file slides into a drawer, stacked with years of ghosts. Outside, laughter drifts faintly from Emily and Tessa walking past the station. Jonah nods toward them. Jonah said, "Proof that scars don't erase joy." Mara answers, "Or that joy is rebellion against scars." The cabinet clicks shut, echoing like a quiet gunshot. The final shot drifts back to the riverbank at dawn, golden light breaking across the horizon. Emily's voice overlays, whispering, "I thought I was gone, but they found me in the dark." Tessa's laughter echoes faintly, warm and fragile. Mara stands at the edge of water, trench fluttering in morning breeze. Jonah approaches, coffee in hand. Jonah said, "The world doesn't end in basements. It begins again in light." Mara nods, whispering, "As long as someone listens." The screen fades to black as the sound of a heavy door slams shut, echoing like memory, leaving silence heavy and eternal.